So, 2 years ago here on the Cover Killer Nation channel, we talked about an album that perhaps was a little bit outside of our comfort zone. We talked about Bruce Springsteen, we talked about his last album, Wrecking Ball, and it was out of the ordinary perhaps at the time, considering I hadn't done a lot of non-metal related videos at that point. However, by the end of 2012, we would have talked about albums also from Bob Dylan, as well as Neil Young with Neil Young and Crazy Horse's Psychedelic Pill, which ended up being the non-metal album of the year that year. So here we are again, here in 2014, and we have another Bruce Springsteen album to talk about. 2 years after Wrecking Ball, the new album entitled High Hopes has been released, and it has a lot of things to offer to a listener. Now, whereas Wrecking Ball 2 years ago was completely original, it was all songs that were brand new and kind of had a subtle anger to it, something that is a little bit different than what you would think about from a metal album that was angry, or me whenever I'm angry. Bruce Springsteen definitely had a definite edge to him on that album, something that was more so explained throughout his storytelling, that was displayed more so through his lyrical content rather than simply by how aggressive the music sounded. So this was something that was done in a bit of a different format. 2 years later with High Hopes, we have a little bit of a different philosophy, a little bit of a different approach to things. These are mainly songs that have been kind of handpicked from the boss, the E Street Band, and Tom Morello, which we're going to get to here in a minute, that maybe either didn't make the cut or were members of the sessions or just simply got a reworking, as well as some new ones altogether as well. Now, Tom Morello's inclusion has been something that has been going on for a couple of years now. In fact, I can remember a few years ago watching a special on VH1 which showed a Bruce Springsteen concert that had Tom Morello being a special guest alongside Bruce and the E Street Band, performing a couple of their songs together, and of course using his style. Tom Morello being from Rage Against the Machine, Audio Slave, and Tom Morello and the Night Watchman, and who has a solo album coming out sometime in 2014. It really fit the bill quite nicely, considering Rage Against the Machine did a cover of The Ghost of Tom Joad, which is the name of an album and a song from Bruce Springsteen. They did that back in the middle part of the 1990s, and its version was very, very good, even though it had a little bit of a different sound to it than the original from Bruce did. That song actually gets a reawakening and a reimagining on this album, with Tom Morello handling the guitar work. It's done more so in Bruce's traditional format, but the solo in this song is definitely what makes it one of the highlights of High Hopes. It's certainly something where his unique style and his unique interpretation of the end portion of that song gave it a heavier edge, while at the same time also really mind-bending a lot of individuals with the solo that he's able to perform on this record. It's one that definitely conjures up a lot of different emotional qualities, and certainly one that is considered a highlight simply because of its ability to not only kind of inspire you a little bit, but at the same time also move you to the brink of tears. And it isn't necessarily because The Ghost of Tom Joad is a sad song. The Ghost of Tom Joad is actually a song that's speaking more so about desolation and destitution, which is kind of a real negative or a somber styling or an idea. However, it's the way in which the whole song is performed. It's the way in which the build takes place. It's kind of the roller coaster ride that it takes you on until you reach the solo, which essentially just moves you to the point where you may leak a little bit. The first song that you hear off of this album, the title track, not to mention the lead single, is High Hopes, the title song, and this is one that also, whenever you hear it on the radio, you kind of don't get the full breadth of the experience, and I don't really know why that is, because I remember hearing it on the radio and thinking to myself, this is okay, this isn't necessarily anything to write home to mother about, so to speak. It's not thrilling, but it does have a decent message to it. It's a thumping song. It's one that has a lot of great quality to it. Whenever you hear it on the album, it definitely boosts it up a little bit, and the message is pretty simple, is that you essentially pay or pray for everything, where it's kind of a take on the American economy. It's a take on the American civilization as it stands, which once again goes hand in hand with Bruce Springsteen's ability to really tell a story without necessarily having to narrate it. It's something where he's able to use metaphor at some portions of his musical work, while at the same time he can also use a very narrative form in order to really tell a story. And that's exhibited in the change from High Hopes to Harry's Town, which is another track which is on the forefront of this album, where you definitely hear a tale about a very, very ruthless gentleman that has basically the town in the palm of his hands. He's one of the stalwarts of the town, and he is a ruthless kingpin. He's an individual where you don't fuck with Harry's girls, you don't fuck with Harry, period. And in the shithole town, Harry is king. And this is one of the moments where you hear the boss get very, very raw. You hear him actually, mutter a couple of explicits, here and there. You hear him drop the F-bomb, and you're kind of a little surprised whenever you consider it. But once again, with the way in which Bruce is able to really narrate and the way in which Bruce is able to tell a story, these are things that are very, very appropriate. It's something where you can almost hear Harry himself speaking these words to an individual. That way, it really establishes the portion that he's the man, he's the kingpin, he's the dude you don't want to fuck with. You don't want to mess with Harry, because messing with Harry could really end up with you losing your life. Either that or you being in a bad, bad situation. High Hopes is a album that definitely is able to conjure up a couple of these different emotions, and you can tell that these are all tracks that are kind of non-linear in the scope, and you can tell that they're from different eras because they kind of talk about different items and different ideals, and it kind of is able to conjure up different aspects of Bruce Springsteen's career. You can see a lot of the 90s era Springsteen in a couple of these tracks in the way in which it's more of a story sense as opposed to really getting knee-deep in American issues. The American issues ideal is something that has really, it's been a forefront of his work. It's been something that's kind of been subtly hidden in the background, but has definitely become a lot more boiled up to the surface in recent memory, especially on recent albums. However, it's something that has always been kind of on the back burner of his works, and those who really wish to kind of explore it deeply are able to take a lot of value from it in those social issues from works that kind of just describe individuals and people. It's storytelling and songwriting in the styles of a Bob Dylan and or a Neil Young or one of those traditional songwriters where they don't have to directly tell you what this song is about through blatantly exposing the subject matter. It's instead something where they're able to use the story of their lyrics in order to get to that point, or have you really draw the conclusion to that point. And it's something that does not take a lot in order to really dig up. It's something that's very real, and it's very easily understood by a lot of people. This is something that has a wide appeal. Now, Tom Morello, I mentioned him before, is actually a guest on many, many tracks on this album, and this goes once again with that working hand-in-hand relationship that they've had ever since he started doing some touring with them. The E Street Band has still, gotten a forefront piece of the work, and they're finally going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in 2014 as a backing band, and they're definitely well-deserved because it's just something that builds the overall experience. I love Harry's Town because it also includes a solo from Clarence Clemens, who is unfortunately no longer with us, and it is just pretty awesome. It's a really, really cool experience to hear him once again. He is definitely something that made the E Street Band something even more than what it was. He definitely has this power that he's able to really describe through his instrument, and just really add a lot of depth to works. And that's, I think, one that I really appreciate a lot more because of all the memories of listening to songs with Clarence on them. As an overall whole, Tom Morello being added into this mix and kind of helping Bruce along in this little journey of developing this album and kind of taking some of these older songs and giving them life, either that or breathing new life into them, certainly has led to a very balanced album that has a lot of great character to it. This isn't necessarily one that's going to feel like it flows perfectly, and that's kind of really difficult to even say by itself because it seems to flow very nicely. So you're going to notice that there's just some differences in the way in which it goes up and down, kind of the roller coaster ride of the album, and that's just based around the fact that these are not hand-picked collections that are trying to necessarily necessitate or facilitate a genuine flow like they were all written just yesterday. This is instead an album that's kind of taking you back to a couple of different eras and kind of bringing to life a lot of things that at one point were just kind of left on the back burner, unfinished, either that or were finished and didn't appear on albums or appeared on albums but definitely needed that new life breathed into them to kind of give it another edge. Tom Morello's add-on there, along with Bruce and along with the E Street Band, definitely adds a new dynamic, and that dynamic is one that I think a lot of fans, whether they be old or new, are really going to appreciate because it gives it a fresh take. And it's not one where Tom Morello is necessarily really stuck in doing that Rage Against the Machine Audio Slave style of guitar playing. He's instead one that's able to kind of expand his own horizons, and I think that working with Bruce has given him that opportunity, and working with the Night Watchman has given him that opportunity, and the same opportunity will be presented to him whenever he does a straight-up rock solo record that I mentioned. Overall, this is a terrific album. I really enjoy listening to this. This is one where it's been my soundtrack at work for the past couple of days, and it just gives me... I appreciate this album for what it is, not to mention I also really enjoy it because of all the different faces that you kind of are able to get through listening to it. I'd give it an 82 out of 100. Obviously, this is the first non-metal album that we've reviewed this year, so right now it's number 1. It's obviously going to probably be dethroned by the end of the year, but another strong showing from Bruce Springsteen, and this is a gentleman that it's very seldom that he releases clunkers. It's very seldom that he releases albums that don't have at least some sort of value to them, and in fact there's none that really come to mind directly, but maybe it's because they're just that unthinkable, either that or undesirable, that they just don't flow to your mind freely. But to me, this is just another great step on this journey. This man is 65 years old, and he's rocking harder than a lot of the bands that you hear today. He's 65 years old, and he has more lyrical content than 99% of the emo / hardcore population. This whiny bullshit. And that's not even me speaking from an old style, old school philosophy. This is just a guy who's able to put a pen to paper and write some lyrics that mean something, as opposed to just putting a pen to paper and kind of tongue-in-cheek lamenting their own issues. So, have you guys listened to High Hopes yet? Is this something that you have kind of come across on your journey, your musical journey? And if so, what's your favorite song off of the album? And how long have you been a Bruce Springsteen fan? And what are some things about Bruce that you really like? Or what are some things about Bruce that you maybe don't like all of that much? Leave all that in the comments, and we will talk once again with the next album review. Talk to you guys later. Cover Killer Nation is out.